Welcome to Freed on Business. He grew up in South Florida, has been in business here since the early 90s, and has closed over $3 billion in deals. He's seen it all. He always has an opinion, and he's always ready to share it. Informed, entertaining, and connected, he has his finger on the pulse of South Florida's business community. He's Jim Freed, and this is Freed on Business.
We've got an extra special show that I've been waiting 50 years to do. Today, we're going to honor the 72 Miami Dolphins, my personal heroes growing up. I'll relate all kinds of real personal stories. My friends that went with me to the games that perfect season have been texting me all morning. We're very excited. We're going to be joined by author Marshall Jon Fisher, who's brought to us by the Miami Book Fair, and our good friend Lisa Paley. So let's get right to the pre-game show, and then we'll be back with Marshall in a second. Mr. Mendoza, I obviously can't even control my mouth, let alone myself. It's yours. That's me playing the show. It's terrific. I can't wait. It's going to be amazing. Before we get started, I want to thank my good friends at Warren Henry. They've been sponsoring us for over a decade. Thank you to Larry Zinn, Eric Day, Warren Zinn, and the rest of the team at Warren Henry Auto. I can't thank them enough. And we know that they're season ticket holders of the Dolphins too. Hey, when you're looking to buy or lease a car, you want to get every advantage that you can. That's why I have to check out Warren Henry, Land Rover, Range Rover, Infiniti, and Jaguar up at 151st and Biscayne. In Gainesville, up on Main Street, they sell Audis. And in Key West, they've got a store that sells all their great nameplates. And what do all these cars have in common? Well, besides being great cars, they come with the Warren Henry Advantage. That's a long list of services that you get. It includes a complimentary service loaner, as well as all kinds of great things. You park your car close to the curb, they'll polish up your scratched up rims. If you lose your fancy key, they'll pay for the replacement. And of course, they'll guarantee you're getting the best price on your trade-in, the best price on your new car, and they'll give you 3 days to trade that car in. Believe me, nobody ever does, because they're such great cars. Join me, my beautiful wife, Vivian, my mom, lots and lots of my friends. We're all members of the Warren Henry family. You should be too. Always the best price, always the best service. Always Warren Henry.
Carlson from Carlson Integrated. You know, a lot of our clients find that they can do anything, but not really everything. And we are always excited to jump in and help. So whether you need another set of hands for a project or even comprehensive marketing management, our team of marketing mavens would love to have a conversation with you to see if we are the right fit. We do everything from logo and design work to email outreach and social media to writing and thought leadership. And here's a fun one. We are now offering our fabulous ebook of top 10 marketing tips on our website for free. So head over to carlsonintegrated.com and grab a copy today. And please always let us know how we can help. My email is Becca, that's BEKAH at carlsonintegrated.com. That's BEKAH at carlsonintegrated.com.
Hey, everybody, it's Jim Freed here. Reach out to me, DM me. I help real estate families and investors with their real estate transactions. Real estate's currently in a transitional period. We know what to do. I've been in this position many times before. I'll be writing an article about it that I'll publish probably next week at this point. But one of the things I want to tell you is to remain calm, stay focused, and continue to be creative. And if you need some additional capital for your real estate deal, give me a call. I've got a lot of families that are interested in helping you get to the next portion of the real estate cycle. Reach out to me. Remember, my personal brand is that I self-actualize by helping other people achieve their dreams and goals. whenever you call me, it's always all about you.
Welcome back to Freed on Business. Connect with us on LinkedIn, YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter at Jim Freed or at Freed on Business, and on Instagram at Jim Freed1. Now, back to your host, Jim Freed.
All right, I want to thank the Miami Book Fair and Lisa Paley for giving us another tremendous guest, author Marshall Jon Fisher. Is he there? Where is he?
Hey, Jim.
There he is. Hey, I'm doing great. So, Marshall, you grew up in Miami?
I did. My family moved to Miami in '66 when I was 3 years old. It happened to be the exact month that the Miami Dolphins began their existence.
God, you're such a puppy.
Yeah.
You're a puppy. So, yeah, I was actually in the stands during the perfect season. We had season tickets. My neighbor, we had paper routes, and we delivered newspapers so we could go to the Dolphin games. We froze our sodas because we didn't want to pay the hefty Zum prices.
Right.
And I have lots of great little vignettes, but I wanted to touch base with you. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks. Good to be here.
All right. Now, you currently live in South Florida, or are you in enemy territory somewhere?
I've been in enemy territory for a long time, but remained a Dolphins fan. I've been living in New England for 35 years or so.
Wow, you're one strong dude.
Yeah.
So, my memories go way back. I was basically the year before my bar mitzvah. I ran out after they won the Super Bowl. I threw confetti everywhere. I figured this was going to happen every year. Well, here I am, 61 years old, almost 62. And we're talking about the perfect season. All the kids in my class, we all had different jerseys for the different players. I was Bob Greasy. Another guy was Zonka, Warfield, Kick, Mercury Morris. Oh, my God, I can name them all. So, Marshall, who do you think was the most pivotal person on that team? And you can't say Don Shula yet.
Okay. Well, you know what the amazing thing about that team was that there's really no one answer. I mean, you could have said Bob Greasy, except he went down in the fifth game. That was the only game that I got to go to. My dad and my brother and I went to Game 5 against San Diego and watched Bob Greasy get wheeled out on the stretcher. And then, Earl Morrall came in. Luckily, Shula had brought in his old backup from Baltimore, 38-year-old Earl Morrall. Certainly didn't think he'd be playing any, but he came in and won 11 straight games for them. So, and there's just so many players you could choose. I mean, you could say Zonka, the Super Bowl. Oh no, he was a Super Bowl MVP the next year, not this year. But Zonka was so great, but they also had Mercury Morris and Jim Kick. They had maybe the greatest wide receiving core with led by the incredible Paul Warfield, but they didn't really hardly use them. I mean, they passed so little. But of course, both lines, the offensive line, the defensive line, I mean, pretty much every position was an MVP type player. So
I'll go back and talk a little bit about Coach Shula. Hold on. Let's have him join us. Coach Shula. There he is, Coach Shula. Coach Shula, I actually got to meet him back a number of years ago at this point. And I once asked him about giving 110%. He said it was BS. He said his guys gave 100% all the time or they wouldn't be sticking around. How did they get Don Shula? What's the story behind all that?
Yeah, that's an interesting story because Shula was the famous coach of the Colts. He had been a player in the NFL for his beloved Cleveland Browns. He grew up in Ohio and then ended up, but he was always kind of a coach at heart. And it's not a coincidence that he became the youngest head coach ever of the Colts back in '63, I think. I'm not sure, blanking on the exact year, but he spent 7 years up in Baltimore. He was famous. He was known as the best coach in the league, although he had never quite gone all the way. He had great seasons with them in 1968 when Earl Morrall filled in for Unitas that year for the whole season and took them to a 15-1 record. They won the NFL championship finally, but then that was the third year they had to play the NFL champ had to play the AFL champ in something they were calling the Super Bowl. And he lost that one to Joe Namath and the Jets. So he had never quite gone all the way. And the year after that, his stock was really falling in Baltimore. The owner, Rosenblum, really was blaming him for this humiliating loss. And he didn't have a great season in '69. And Miami, the Dolphins had 4 seasons under George Wilson. who was actually a good coach. I mean, he had won the NFL championship for Detroit in the 50s, but he was at the end of his career. He wasn't too intense down here in Miami. And Joe Robbie was looking for a new coach. And he wanted Bear Bryant from Alabama, but he couldn't get him. And then Bill Broucher of the Miami Herald was a college classmate of Shula's. And he said to Robbie, why don't you get Shula? And he even offered to make a phone call for him. And he did. And when Broucher called Shula, it was the perfect timing because, as I said, Shula was not as beloved in Baltimore as he had been. Things were a little tense up there, and he was very receptive to this offer to come down and talk to Joe Robbie. And he flew down, and within like 9 weeks, they had a contract, and he came down in the spring of 1970. That was the beginning of the great years for Miami.
So I remember that the Dolphins originally started practicing on the beach, literally, and they weren't exactly the most disciplined group of guys. What happened when Coach Shula showed up?
Well, the contrast and the incredible start that Shula had is kind of helped along by the fact that in 69 they had so many injuries. They actually had a lot of their great players by 69, but they had just horrendous injuries, and they might have had a pretty good season that year, but instead they fell back to 3-11 in their fourth season. So then Shula comes in. He's got a lot of great players already down here who then get healthy, but he also brought in a lot of players. They had a tremendous overturn of between 69 and 70. And so his very first year, they went to 10-4 and went to the playoffs from having had 4 bad seasons as an expansion team. But Shula, had incredible discipline. As you say, George Wilson, although he was an experienced, respected NFL coach, he was like near the end of his career. He wasn't taking it too seriously down in Miami. I think he saw that as a springboard to retirement. And it was pretty easy going. And the players all loved him because he took it so easy on them. And, he'd sometimes bring out a cooler full of beer and just say, all right, guys, have a nice afternoon, or they'd go swimming when it was too hot. Shula came in, and first of all, there was a strike, so he was a little late getting started. And so when the veterans finally arrived, they began with 4-a-day practices in the Miami Heat. And it was just brutal. And they talk about it to this day, how they couldn't wait to go to bed at night, except that they didn't want to go to bed because they knew as soon as they woke up, they were back on that practice field. It was just brutal. There couldn't have been a greater contrast between the coaching styles. But within a very short time, they were all on board with him because they could see that they were going to win. They were going to be a different team under Shula. And they really bought into the program to a man, and it really turned everything around.
Now, Coach Shula came in, and he brought some coaches. Talk a little bit about that coaching staff, because each one of them was basically a head coach in and of his own right. And in fact, Howard Schnellenberger won a collegiate national championship. We know what he did down here at UM. Yeah,
it wasn't just Shula, although Shula was an amazing coach, but he put together an incredible staff. Yeah, Schnellenberger, who turned out to be, of course, a great head coach, although by most accounts, he didn't have to really do that much with Miami because their offense was so great, but it was so settled, and it was a running game. And he was also the receivers coach, but they didn't do that much passing. Monty Clark, the offensive line coach, who he brought in, was maybe more important because he was a very interesting guy. He was a musician and a poet, and he had all his players read this book on cyberkinetics about visualizing success, very psychological. And he was an intellectual kind of coach, and he turned the offensive line around. He took players who had not been that great before they came to him, like Larry Little out in San Diego had been just a kind of run-of-the-mill player. But he came back to Miami, his hometown, and under Monty Clark, he became the best ever. And the same thing for guys like Norm Evans, Kuchenberg, who had been nothing before that. Monty Clark was an amazing coach. And then the defense under Bill Arnsparger, another genius, also very intellectual, kind of professorial, as people remembered him. And he, developed this incredible defense. So you had some great coaching under Shula.
We're going to take a quick break, and then we're going to talk a little bit about some of the great players that absolutely lighted up in my mind to this day. We'll be right back with Marshall Jon Fisher. We want to thank again the Miami Book Fair. Marshall, when are you going to be appearing at the book fair?
I'm going to be there this Saturday the 19th at 3 p.m. and talking about my book, 17-0.
Oh my gosh, I can't wait. This is going to be tremendous. Mr. Mendoza, rock the house. Can you tell that I'm in heaven yet? I really am. You know when else I'm in heaven? I'm in heaven when I go to Warren Henry. And you may laugh about that, but you should join me there one day. They've got a tremendous room that I hang out in when I'm getting my car serviced. Everybody's always really positive and happy. So when you're looking to buy or lease a car, you always know you want to get every advantage that you can. That's why I have to check out Warren Henry. Land Rover, Range Rover, Infiniti, and Jaguar up at 151st and Biscayne. Up in Gainesville, up on Main Street, they sell Audis. Down in the Keys, they sell all their great nameplates. And what do all the cars have in common? Well, they're all great cars, and they all come with the Warren Henry advantage. That's the long list of services that you get when you buy your Warren Henry vehicle. You get complimentary key replacement if you lose those keys. Of course, if you need to leave your car, they'll give you a complimentary loaner. They'll make sure you're getting the best price on your trade-in. They'll make sure you're getting the best price on your new car, and they'll give you 72 hours to make sure you like that new car, or you can trade it back in. And guess what? Nobody ever does that because they love their cars. How do I know? Me, my beautiful wife, Vivian, my mom, lots and lots of my friends will all attest to the fact. So remember, always the best service, always the best price, always Warren Henry.
Can AI supercharge your real estate analysts? With Deep Blocks, you can now canvas entire cities in minutes. Search by total buildable, potential units, and uses allowed. Now live in 100 cities. Book a private demo and supercharge your real estate analysts. deepblocks.com/demo.
Mr. Mendoza and I are coordinating with Olivia. We'll be getting Olivia back on hopefully in December to talk about more AI and futurisms and stuff like that. She's tremendous. We can't wait to have her. You know who else is tremendous? You, my clients and my viewers. Got a lot of great clients. We've been meeting regularly. A number of them are high net worth investors. The one thing a high net worth investor can't do is sit on cash. So they need to find investments. They're going, Jim, where do we put our money? We don't want to just bet on the jockeys. We also want to bet on the strategies. So I'm putting all of the high net worth investors I know together with some of the best sponsors, and we're sitting there and we're capitalizing real estate transactions. You don't want debt right now. You need thoughtful equity that'll allow you to take on new deals and expand your horizons. If you're seeking that kind of equity, give me a call. Remember, my personal brand is that I self-actualize by helping other people, that's you, achieve your dreams and goals. That means execute your business plan. And remember, whenever you call me, it's always all about you.
Welcome back to Freed on Business. Connect with us on LinkedIn, YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter at Jim Freed or at Freed on Business, and on Instagram at Jim Freed1. Now, back to your host, Jim Freed.
We're here today with author Marshall Jon Fisher. We want to thank the Miami Book Fair and Lisa Paley for bringing him to our show. Mr. Mendoza, where is he? Oh, there he is. And he has a secret. He's actually located in enemy territory up there somewhere in Massachusetts. But we'll give it to him for being a tough guy and sticking it out there. Now, I have all kinds of memories because I was in the stands in 72, just like you were. One of the things I remember was one of the first great marketing ploys that Rick Weaver brought up. Oh, here it is, right here. Woo! The White Hanky and that fight song. Oh my gosh, the fight song. That's when it started, isn't it?
Yeah, the great song, Miami Dolphins #1. I tell the story about that in my book. The guy who wrote that song, Lee. I'm blanking on the name. Lee something.
We're both getting old, John. We're both getting old.
He didn't get too famous with it. He also didn't make any money off it for some reason. He got paid almost nothing.
Did he sell it to Houston to make money?
That's what happened. He couldn't. He was trying to get the Dolphins to pay him, and they didn't want to. Joe Robbie was known as a bit of a cheapskate. I don't know if that was what was going on here, but this guy Lee Hoffman, he did not get paid for that song, even though it was, as you remember, it was everywhere in Miami that year, all over the radio. And so he rewrote it for the Oilers and made some money that way a couple years later.
Well, good for him, but we know where it started. So the White Hankies, I was texting with my friends earlier today that went to the game. So here's some of our other memories. The stadium shaking, the old tin can Orange Bowl, and the uncomfortable bathroom situation as well. But the thing that I remember most, my most striking memory, was Monday Night Football. What happened on Monday Night Football during the perfect season?
There was only one game on Monday night, and it was actually right around this time of year, November. It was a game 11. So they were playing St. Louis Cardinals in the Orange Bowl. And, of course, Howard Cosell and his buddies Meredith and Gifford came down. And it was kind of funny because, back then you couldn't see highlights of games anywhere. The only time you got to see any highlights were halftime of Monday Night Football. They'd pick about 5 or 6 games and show a few plays of each. And the Miami fans were very angry that year because they hadn't shown the Dolphins all year in any of those halftime highlights. And that all their ire was directed at Howard Cosell. Although, as he took time to point out, he was not the one who selected the games, but he took the brunt of the anger, and there were all kinds of threats being made against him, and he shouldn't come down here. He's going to be in trouble, and all kinds of signs. It was, and he even asked Ed Pope, the sports editor, to please say in his column how it's not his fault. And Pope did that, and Shula even came out and they came up with a statement that people, take it easy. We don't want anything bad to happen while Cosell's here. But he came down, and it wasn't actually it wasn't one of the better games of the season, but. It was, it's always fun to have Monday Night Football in town.
So I remember that game. You could hear, he sat underneath the press box. You could hear Cosell outside. It was tremendous. It was absolutely tremendous. Now, tell me a little bit about who you think the most stylish player was. And I believe that it's a contest between Curtis Johnson and Bob Greasy.
Well, two opposites. Greasy might get the I don't know. I don't think he
clean cut All-American boy look versus
that was the thing
Curtis
about
Johnson, who was a little bit flamboyant.
Curtis Johnson had the biggest afro in the league, and
number 45, if I'm correct.
Yes, 45. Curtis Johnson, great player, very, very quiet man. People said they would go all year, they wouldn't hear 2 words from him. His teammates would say that, but a great player. But yeah, the thing about this team is that it's such a contrast in styles, and you just pointed out the 2 polar ends. You had the guys like Curtis Johnson, then you had the guys like Manny Fernandez with the big Fu Manchu mustache and the sideburns. It's 1972. So you had all these kind of guys who were with the styles of the times. And then you had these more conservative crew cut types, including Earl Morrall, the 2 quarterbacks, Morrall and Greasy, both kind of very conservative looking. And
Warfield, he wasn't exactly a high flyer.
That's correct. As far as style goes, he was, that's absolutely true. And you had, you had people like Doug Swift, who was the closest they had to a hippie on the team. He came from Little Amherst College. He was very liberal. He was at odds with some of the other guys with political things. They really had a mix of politics, mix of styles, mix of personalities. But the amazing thing is that none of that got in their way. And under Shula, they really blended together as a team, and they were all on board with that one ambition of getting back to the Super Bowl and winning it.
I do want to talk about that a little because people forget about Miami in 1972. It was the height of integration. People were having sick outs when they would integrate the schools. There was a lot of segregation still in sports. I don't even know. Maybe there's still a team or 2 that didn't even have an African-American player at that point. Maybe that's a little late. But what were the innovations that Coach Shula brought to the team to help bridge the gap on that?
Yeah, well, Shula came down, and I just say, things were around the league were fairly segregated. Every team did have a black player by then. The last team to get one was Washington. They had a notoriously racist owner. But, Shula came down to Miami, and Marv Fleming came down that same year from Green Bay. And he came into the locker room, and all the black guys were on one side, and all the white guys were on the other side of the locker. And Fleming just laughed. He said, "Hey, you got to be kidding me. Are you okay if I just go in the middle here?" And Shula saw this, and Shula made a point of integrating the locker room, and he assigned roommates, and they were almost all mixed race roommates. And he really made a point of doing that, and it had a big impact. As Mercury Morris pointed out to me, he didn't think it was because Shula was such a, he was such a liberal and wanted, so invested in integration. Although he was certainly, I think, for integration, but his motivation here was to win, and that's all he cared about. It was getting the winning edge. And he said you couldn't have a team if you're separated like that. And so he integrated them as a way of bringing them together as a team.
I love that Marv Fleming story. I had never heard that before. And I love the way you weaved in the winning edge. What's the winning edge?
That's Shula's term. He would do anything. He was attentive to any detail that would get him that winning edge. Anything that, the discipline, every detail. And the funny thing is, though, that you mentioned that, now that I'm talking about his attention to detail, which was masterful. That game you were at, well, you were at all the games, but that Monday night game, not many people remember. Do you remember the blocked field goal in that game?
No.
Well, everyone remembers Gary Yepremian in the Super Bowl. Everyone remembers that one play from the Super Bowl. Gary Yepremian gets it blocked. He tries to throw. It goes straight up in the air. It comes down. He pops it up again. And finally, Mike Bass takes it for a touchdown. But 2 months before that Super Bowl, in this Monday night game, Yepremian, the same thing happened. He had a field goal blocked. He tried to throw it instead of falling on it. It went up in the air. But in this case, it just fell to the ground and everyone jumped on it. So it was it wasn't as bad. But what's amazing to me is that Shula, who, saw to every detail of the game, I can't believe that after that, he didn't have Garrow practicing falling on the ball every practice, 15 minutes. Because 2 months later, it came back and happened again. It almost cost him the Super Bowl.
Now, let's talk about what I've always heard is the inflection point of the season, the Minnesota game. Tell me a little bit about the Minnesota game and why that was really the platform that propelled them to their perfect season.
Oh, what it was, it's game 3. It's early on. I mean, the people talk about an easy schedule for the Dolphins that year, but it didn't start out that way. 3 of the first 4 games were against Super Bowl contenders. They first had to go to Kansas City and beat the Chiefs, who were supposed to probably be in the Super Bowl.
And Lenny Dawson.
A lot of people thought that. And then in game 3, they had to go up to Minnesota, another Super Bowl favorite, the Vikings with Fran Tarkenton and the Purple People Eaters, a great team. And that was the toughest, closest game of the season. They were losing in the fourth quarter by 8 points, and there's no 2-point conversion back then. So they needed 2 scores in the fourth. They did it with 2 long drives. They used an end-around pass from Marlon Briscoe, the former quarterback, now wide receiver. He threw a big pass on a 3rd down play in one drive. And then the final drive, they got a roughing the passer call that helped. They finally got down, and they down to the 3-yard line, and with a minute left, faked the handoff to Zonka, a little pass up to Mandich over the middle for the 2-point victory. So that was the closest they ever came to losing, and a great game. Game 3, though. It was early on. No one was thinking undefeated at that point.
No, they were just trying to go, I'm going to have to say it, one game at a time. Hey, Marshall, I appreciate you being here for the first half of the show. You could stick for the second half, can't you?
Absolutely.
Awesome. We're going to do 4 full quarters with Marshall Jon Fisher, and he's going to be at the Miami Book Fair. Marshall, when are you going to be appearing?
This Saturday, the 19th at 3 p.m. Here's my book I'm going to be talking about, 17-0. Just came out a couple months ago, and it's all about the Miami and the perfect season of 72.
I love the font on that book too. It takes
me right back. Look, right? They got
right back.
The colors and the font. They did a good job with that.
They really did. You got a good team on there. You got a good team. You got the perfect team on your book too.
That's right.
We'll be right back. We're gonna talk to our friends at Warren Henry. Then Marshall will be back with us, and we're going to talk about all the different games, some of the nuances of the games, and then the postseason. We're going to talk about the games after this with Marshall Jon Fisher and the perfect season Miami Dolphins. Boy, can you tell that I'm in aqua and orange heaven, Mr. Mendoza? Thank you. Little technical difficulty there, but we're back on track. I want to thank our friends at Warren Henry for being our sponsors for a decade now. Warren Henry, of course, has the local Football Player of the Year awards that they'll be announcing later this fall, and we'll be working with them to promote that later on this fall. And of course, when you're looking to buy or lease a car, you want to get every advantage that you can. That's why you have to check out Warren Henry, Land Rover, Range Rover, Infiniti, and Jaguar. They're all great cars, and they all come with the Warren Henry Advantage. That's a whole list of services you get. It starts off, of course, if you have to leave your car, they'll give you a loaner. If you lose those fancy, expensive keys, they'll replace them for you. If you close park your car and scrape up your rims, that's me, they'll polish them up for you. And remember, they'll always guarantee that you're getting the best price on your used car, the best price on your new car, and they'll give you 3 days to return your car. And nobody ever does that because they love their cars. So join me, my beautiful wife, Vivian, my mom, lots and lots of my friends. We're all members of the Warren Henry family. You should be too. Always the best price, always the best service, always Warren Henry.
This is Becca Carlson from Carlson Integrated. You know, a lot of our clients find that they can do anything, but not really everything. We are always excited to jump in and help. So whether you need another set of hands for a project or even comprehensive marketing management, our team of marketing mavens would love to have a conversation with you to see if we are the right fit. We do everything from logo and design work to email outreach and social media to writing and thought leadership. And here's a fun one. We are now offering our fabulous ebook of top 10 marketing tips on our website for free. So head over to carlsonintegrated.com and grab a copy today. And please always let us know how we can help. My email is Becca, that's BEKAH at carlsonintegrated.com. That's BEKAH at carlsonintegrated.com.
Hi, I'm Jim Fried, and in the real estate world, things, they are a-changing. We're in transition for a variety of different reasons, but I've been in the real estate market for years, and I've seen lots and lots of transitional periods. There's a lot of things that you can do to prepare yourself for the transition. I'll be putting together an essay, and I'll be posting that online probably next week, but I'm already working with a number of families to help them position themselves for the upcoming real estate transitional period. The most important thing, of course, is to stay close to people with equity and an operating company that you can work with. And remember, reach out to me. My personal brand is that I self-actualize by helping other people achieve their dreams and goals. And of course, remember, whenever you call me, it's always all about you.
Welcome back to Fried on Business. Connect with us on LinkedIn, YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter at Jim Fried or at Fried on Business, and on Instagram at Jim Fried1. Now, back to your host, Jim Fried.
We're on with author Marshall Jon Fisher. We're talking about the perfect season of the Miami Dolphins. I want to thank the Miami Book Fair as well as Lisa Paley for bringing Marshall to the show. Mr. Mendoza, where is our guest? There he is. Marshall, let's start off by talking about when you're going to be at the book fair.
Yeah, this Saturday, November 19th at 3 p.m. It's perfect Dolphins Day at the book fair, by the way, because in the morning at 11, Dave Barry is going to be interviewing Larry Zonka. Yeah, 11 a.m. And then hopefully people will stick around because later in the day at 3 p.m., Dave's wife, Michelle Kaufman, the longtime Herald sports writer, is going to be interviewing me about my book. Here it is again, 17-0. And we'll be talking at 3 p.m. So it's 72 Dolphins Day.
It sure is. It's like 72 Dolphins year. I think I'll just say it. Why not? So I've been sequestered in my cave since COVID started. I hadn't really been out. I decided I'd roll the dice, and the first big event that I would go to would be the honoring of the 72 Dolphins at what are they calling now? Hard Rock Stadium. Sorry. And I went there. I was surrounded by people. No one had been to the games in 72 except for me. And I thought that the big moment for me would be when they trotted them all out on the on the cars. No, it was just being in there with all the fans and hearing the 62,000 people cheering and being a member of humanity again. So the 72 Dolphins will even have that place for me forever as they help bring me back into the community. But let's talk about some of these Dolphins in the community. There were many, many Dolphins that had incredibly successful careers after they played during the perfect season. The one that comes to mind easily is Dick Anderson. What are some of the other interesting careers after the 72 season that the Dolphins had?
Yeah, that was the thing about this team, is that it was they weren't just great football players, they were a very intelligent group of people. So many of them had great success after football. One was a doctor, one was several were lawyers, became lawyers, and a number of very successful businessmen. As you said, Dick Anderson, he was doing business. He was a businessman even while he was playing for the Dolphins. He had one of the very first car phones and had it installed in the trunk of his Maverick. I think he had a yellow Maverick, and he had this big box in the trunk, and there was a phone in there, so he could make business calls because he had been using the payphone in the locker room. Every time they came in for a break, he'd be making calls. He had a company that sold insurance to banks. He had a real estate license. He was doing all kinds of business, and and he continued that, of course, after his football days. He was also a state senator for a while. But other guys, Bonaconte he was a lawyer, but he also was a very successful businessman. Even while he was playing, he had a company, and he basically licensed the images of his fellow NFL players on all kinds of things, cups and shirts and things. He made a lot of money for himself and for his fellow players while he was playing. So a lot of them had these very successful careers afterward.
Yeah, I always saw Bonaconte. I worked in Coconut Grove. I saw Bonaconte for years in the office. What a wonderful gentleman. Always kind. Always said hello. Always was a fun guy in the elevator. I really enjoyed him. So, what do you think is the most pivotal game? We talked about the Minnesota game. We talked about Garrow's pass. What do you think was one of the more pivotal moments that season?
Well, yeah, that early one against the Vikings, of course. They had a couple close games with the Jets, but there really was never
stinking Jets.
What's that?
The stinking Jets. I couldn't resist. Sorry.
Well, yeah, it's all right. It's fine with me.
No.
There was never a point during the season where you thought they were going to lose, though. Even though some of the games seemed close. There was a crazy game against the Bills in the Orange Bowl, which ended up 24-23, but it was really never in doubt. It was the one game the Dolphins made so many errors and mistakes. It was crazy. But still, it was only that close because Buffalo scored in the final minute, and they couldn't do a 2-point conversion, so they could just get within one point. Although that the craziest thing of the whole season, I think, is that game, 24-23, the Bills score to get within 1 point. There's a minute left. They have only one timeout left, and they kick it deep. They didn't try an onside kick, and Morrell just fell on the ball 3 times. And the game was over. I've yet to find anyone who can explain why on earth what happened in that game. That's the big.
I'd really like to hear what OJ has to say about that. OJ was on that team.
The 72 season, but they got into the playoffs, 14-0. They were a little tense. Now the first game against Cleveland in the playoffs was very tight. They all agreed that they just didn't. They came out. They were a little nervous. It was a game where if they lost, it was over, and they did not play a great game there, and they had to come back in the fourth quarter to win that one. Warfield was instrumental in beating his old team in that game. And then the Pittsfield Steelers in the AFC Championships, another pretty close game. And that's the game where Greasy came back. The offense was kind of not doing that great. It was really close. He brought in Greasy for the second half, immediately threw a long pass to Warfield. They had a long drive, and they took over the game at that point. But there really was never a point in that season where you thought, oh, they're finally going to lose.
Well, they were just well constituted and all around really good team. So who do you think was the biggest character on that team, the most unusual person?
Yeah, there's so many. I mentioned Doug Swift. He was such a funny guy. He had such a unusual attitude toward football. He would always be saying things in interviews like, I don't really know if football is my bag. He was the one who played for Division III Amherst College, a great intellectual school, a great liberal arts school, not known for football, of course. It's a very small school. And he somehow got a tryout with the Dolphins through his coach who had a connection. And also there was a strike in 1970. So that gave some people an opportunity. He came down, he made the team, and he was the starting linebacker for his whole career down here. But very funny guy. And, he and Gary Apremian, another great character, were roommates until Swift got married. But the first year they were in 1970, they were roommates in training camp. And after training camp, they got an apartment together in the Grove. And they were like the odd couple. Swift was this slob with he had plants and growing mushrooms, and he had all kinds of fruits he brought in to make his smoothies with. And Gary Apremian was a very, very neat character, but they got along great. They were a couple of funny guys. I mean, there were a lot of funny characters on that team. Jake Scott was a great character. What an incredible athlete, such a great player, but and very smart, like a lot of them. He and Dick Anderson, the two safeties, both very smart guys, smart players. Best friends, although again, like the odd couple, they were completely different. Jake Scott was a bar brawler, a tough guy. He was a girl chaser, single guy driving around in his Corvette. And then Dick Anderson was married with little kids and then drove around in his Maverick making business deals. But they got along great. They even vacationed together and bought some real estate together in Colorado. So just a lot of different characters on that team.
So then talk to me about my favorite Sports Illustrated cover, Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid and Mercury Morris. Tell me a little bit about the backfield.
Yeah. Well, first of all, Butch and Sundance, Kick and Zonka. And I always kind of wondered why was Jim Kick Butch Cassidy, and Zonka, the great Hall of Famer and MVP, he was the Sundance Kid. And what I learned while researching my book is that, they came down together in 68. They were both drafted in 68, immediately became best friends, and they were, going out partying all the time and breaking rules on the team. But the first 2 years, 68 and 69, Kick was the more productive player. He was the guy who went to the AFL Pro Bowl, not Zonka. Kick got more yardage, more carries, a lot more receptions. And so that's why when they loved that movie, 1969, Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, and they were starting to trade lines a lot from the movie. And Bill Broucher of the Herald noticed that they were quoting that movie a lot, and they loved that movie, and he dubbed them Butch and Sundance. And of course, Kick was the leader, so he was Butch Cassidy. Zonka, who was doing a lot of the blocking for Kick, which obviously this was going to reverse the next year, but he was the sidekick, the Sundance Kid. So, but for 4 years, they were the backfield. They were, Kick and Zonka from 68 through 71. Even though Mercury Morris came down in 69, and he was a great college runner, he was except after OJ, he was the number one college runner in the country, but he didn't get that many carries. He didn't fit into the backfield for a while. And he made us think about that after the Super Bowl that they lost to Dallas. He didn't get a single carry, and he kind of exploded in the locker room, and Shula called him in and he complained, and Shula promised him he'd get a chance that in 72 in that training camp. And he came in, he had an incredible preseason in 72, and Shula just couldn't keep him out after that. So Mercury Morris complimented them perfectly. And even though it was a little tense because he and Kick had to share playing time, but Merc still got 1,000 yards that season. And so he and Zonka were the first duo to get 1,000 yards each. And he just, that was an incredible backfield at that point.
We're going to take a quick break, and then we're going to come back, and we'll talk about what fueled the 72 perfect season and then what happened afterwards right after this. All right. I'd like to thank our friends at Warren Henry. They've been a sponsor for over a decade. We're starting our second decade as a brand ambassadors for Warren Henry. I want to thank our friends Larry, Eric, Warren, Ismet, the rest of the team over at Warren Henry. And remember, when you're looking to buy or lease a car, you want to get every advantage that you can. That's why you have to check out Warren Henry. Land Rover, Range Rover, Infiniti, and Jaguar. They're all great cars, and they all come with the Warren Henry advantage. What's that? Well, that's a long list of services you get. It includes, of course, a free service loaner if you're leaving your car there. They'll replace those fancy keys if you lose them. They'll polish up your rims if you scrape them up. Of course, I like the fact that they'll guarantee that you will get the best price for your trade-in, that you'll get the best price on your new car, and you'll get 3 days to decide whether you like that car. If you don't, you can turn it back, but nobody ever does because they love those cars. They're all great cars. Join me, my beautiful wife, Vivian, my mom, lots and lots of my friends. We're all members of the Warren Henry family. You should be too. Always the best price, always the best service. You got it. You know it. Always Warren Henry.
It's time to stop the hate and spread some love. You are beautiful, you're smart, you are awesome, and you never have to change for anybody. You have the voice and you have the power. We are so much stronger when we come together. It's your choice, so choose to be inspired. Choose to be accepting, be strong, be brave, be awesome, be daring, be kind. Choose kindness.
Well, they just can't they can't stop texting me. They've all got all kinds of questions they want me to ask, and we'll do some of that after the break. Hey, everybody. Lots of people are asking me about what's going on in the real estate market. The real estate market's in transition. I've seen it many times before. There's certain steps that you need to take right now. I'm putting together a little essay, if you will, about some of the ideas that I have that I'd like to share with people about what to do during a period of transition. Of course, the number one thing is to find a great team, a great real estate group, and stick with them. There'll be other ideas that I'll share with you next week. But remember, my personal brand is that I self-actualize by helping other people achieve their dreams and goals. So remember, whenever you call me, it's always all about you.
Welcome back to Freed on Business. Connect with us on LinkedIn, YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter at Jim Freed or at Freed on Business, and on Instagram at Jim Freed1. Now, back to your host, Jim Freed.
All right, we're in the fourth quarter with our guest, author Marshall Jon Fisher. His book, 17-0, is out. It's going to be presented. He's going to be presenting it at the Miami Book Fair. Mr. Mendoza, where is Marshall? He's going to be at the Miami Book Fair this weekend. Marshall, when are you going to be up there?
This Saturday, 3 p.m. Come at 11 for Larry Zonka, and I'll be there at 3 with talking to Michelle Kaufman of the Herald about 17-0. Oh, there we go. I'm sure there's going to be a tremendous lunch in there somewhere that's going to be had.
Yeah. Oh boy, I'd love to be on a fly on the wall on that. So let's talk a little bit about what fueled all of this 17-0. And a lot of times they give credit to the crushing Super Bowl loss that they had the year before. People don't realize the meteoric rise of this team from doormat to wild card. I guess it was like the first wild card round. And then they played Dallas in the Super Bowl and they got crushed.
Yeah. I don't think they were a wild card in 71, though. Maybe in 70.
No, 70, they were the wild card.
It was very first year playoffs. Next year, all the way to the Super Bowl. And they got crushed. That game, to me, wasn't as bad as people say. I mean, the first half was quite close, very competitive. But Dallas did run away with it in the second half. And that was just humiliating for Shula and for the players. And he went around, he said to them right in the locker room afterward, remember how you feel right now.
Made me cry.
What?
Made me cry.
Yeah. And he said, make sure you never feel this way again. And Vern Den Herder told me that on the plane home, he went up again to every player one by one and said the same thing. Remember how you're feeling now and vow that you're not going to feel that way again. And he got them on board, man for man, to avenge that loss and get back to the Super Bowl and win it.
Now, they won the Super Bowl the next year. They won the Super Bowl the following year, and I think maybe we were even a more dominant team, but just didn't get the luck to go perfect. Right. What broke the team up?
Well, first of all, it was during the, or rather before the 74 season, there was the big announcement that Zonka, Kick, and Warfield were going to leave and go to the World Football League. And so, even though they played the whole 74 season, it was a very unusual situation because they were playing out their option, knowing that everyone knew that was their last year. So, they still were good in 74. They had a very good season again, of course. They're basically the same team. They had Matt Moore as well as a rookie. They went to the playoffs, and then there was that awful loss to Oakland, the Sea of Hands game, out in Oakland, where they were winning in the final seconds. And Ken Stabler, as he was being sacked by Vern Denherter, he barely pushed the ball into the end zone, a wobble, went through everybody's hands and in for a touchdown. So, and that was the end of the glory years, because that awful loss was the last game for Zonka, Kick, and Warfield. A number of other guys got hurt the next year. It was just never the same after that. It was really the end of the golden years.
So what lesson is there to be taken from the way that the Dolphins came together, won that Super Bowl, had the perfect season? What do you think is the big lesson to be learned there?
Well, you can learn a lot from Shula and how he achieved that, which is the determination, the hard work, the attention to detail, and just always being focused on your goal. And the players themselves also were just committed to a goal. They didn't let other things bother them. There's a lot going on in society, and I talk about that a lot in my book, about everything that was going on in the background in 72. Both national conventions were in Miami, and Watergate was beginning. The investigation was beginning. The Vietnam War was still going on and still dividing the country. And the players could have been divided also, like the country was, but they were committed to a goal, and they stuck to it, and they really achieved what they wanted to.
What's your favorite story from the perfect season?
There's a lot of great stories. There's all these great, there was a playful team as well. There were a lot of great pranks, famous ones that everyone knows, like when Fernandez and Stanfield caught a gator and they brought it back and then put it in Shula's shower, in his private shower. And, he blamed Kick, because he blamed Kick for everything, but Kick had nothing to do with it. Kick wouldn't be caught dead in the Everglades. He was a city boy from New Jersey. But he said, the only thing you can thank me for is, or rather, the only thing I had to do with it is we all voted on whether to tape the mouth shut of the gator. And luckily for you, I lost. So, there's that one. There was the Zonka, I believe it was, who one day, this is in 73, I think, substituted. They were coming in to watch the game film, and right before he substituted a X-rated movie for the game film, and Shula came in and started the projector, these old reel-to-reel projectors, and it wasn't what he was expecting, and turned red as a beet. And he was a very conservative guy in that sense. And there are a lot of good stories about fun they had together and pranks and things like that.
What prompted you to write the book?
Well, like you, I was a kid during that season, and it just stuck with me forever. I think everyone who was around in Miami at that time, I think it had a great impact on, but especially us kids, it really affected us. And I always intended to write about them. I even wrote a short story about that year when I was in college, and then I always wanted to write a book about that season. And I thought about it for the 30th anniversary and the 40th anniversary, but finally, with the 50th anniversary coming up, I got my contract for the book sold a few years in advance, so I had time to work on it and got it to come out right in time for the 50th anniversary.
So tremendous. It brought all my friends together. It brought us again together today when I texted them all about it. We used to play, football in the backyard, football in the street, football at the school, and not like organized football, just like sandlot football.
Yeah.
And it was so wonderful. Chipped my tooth. But my memories of the Dolphins, like I said at the beginning, were we'd all go in our classroom. It was so long ago that we were in elementary school and did not have air conditioning. We collected coupons to pay for the air conditioning in the schools. There was time of integration. There was a lot of fomented anger. This was really the super deep South. People don't remember that. And the Dolphins were something that we could all come together with. There was no heat. There was no Marlins. There was the Hurricanes weren't exactly tremendous. The Gators weren't so great. This was it.
That's true. In the whole state of Florida, the Dolphins were the only major league level sports team. I mean, not just the only NFL team. There's the only first class pro team in the whole state of Florida.
Yeah, well, we had minor league baseball. So this was it. And it was so great. It brought my friends and I together back then. It's bringing us together again today. Marshall, I want to give you the last word on the perfect season. What do you think about all that?
Well, it was just, when you were a kid back then and you grow up and you think, well, were they really that special a group, or was it just something that happened? And the thing I learned researching this book is that it really was a special group of people. It was not a normal football team. They were really smart. They were really committed, and they had an incredible coach. And, I don't think it's just luck or chance that they're the only team in over 100 years of NFL football that ever accomplished a perfect season.
Especially at that time, maybe less today, they were viewed as a community trust, as really something that belonged to the community. The town basically shut down on Sundays for them. I thought it would go on forever. I literally ripped up the newspaper and had it waiting. And when they won that Super Bowl, I threw it all over the place. Thought I'd be doing that every year. Yeah. Hasn't happened a lot since then, for sure, with the Dolphins. And so, it really meant the world to me. Marshall, when are you going to be appearing at the book fair again? And what's going to happen before you come on?
That's a good setup there. This Saturday, the 19th, at the Miami Book Fair, it's Perfect Dolphins Day. You got Larry Zonka talking to Dave Barry at 11 a.m. Then get a little lunch, and then come see Michelle Kaufman and me at 3 p.m. She'll be interviewing me on stage about the book, 17-0, Miami, 1972, and the NFL's only perfect season. And I hope to see everybody there.
It's going to be great. I can't wait. I really want to thank you so much for polishing up the apple on the perfect season for us. This really was a dream. When I saw the list of people speaking at the book fair, I asked Lisa specifically to bring you on so that I've got to say it, so I could self-actualize my little self here a little bit. I want to thank you so much, Marshall. I really do appreciate what you've done here for the community and bringing this together and giving us what I would say would be a really wonderful overview, historic piece of something that's incredibly important to the fabric of our town and our society. Thank you again, Marshall Jon Fisher. Thank you to Lisa Paley and the book fair for bringing Marshall on. And just one more time, he'll be there at the book fair. He'll be there at 3:00 on Saturday, where it's Linda Robertson will be interviewing you.
No, Michelle Kaufman.
Michelle Kaufman. Sorry, yeah. Oh my God. I hope they don't kill me for talking about two different ladies that work for the Herald.
Michelle Kaufman of the Miami Herald.
That's okay. I had a concussion, so I'm not all there right now. Okay. So, but thank you so much, Marshall. We really do appreciate you. Mr. Mendoza, I think the rest of the show is yours.